I wanted to understand, how does this guy get from a board meeting at 7:15 in the morning in California to a soccer game for his son in Florida at 5:15 at night, and the litany of details that he has in the interim, and he's able to get up and do it day after day after day without burnout and without the regret or the fear of being able to miss out. But if you find yourself in my position where it was something that you were kind of chasing a dream that maybe really wasn't yours, again, I shared with you multiple times, I just wanted to make my dad proud. To be able to understand that by June of the year, if you're not pacing at plus or minus 500, you probably need to have some conversations to course correct. We do that in our businesses like clockwork, but nobody does it in their personal life. And eventually, dude, you put yourself in a position where you've got a circle, not a cage.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Happy birthday to you. We are here with a very special guest of mine, my brother, Mr. Al Hamid. This is a man that I met about 4-ish years ago, coming up on 4 years. And I will never forget the day that I met that man. We were both headed into a mastermind. And I don't think either one of us really knew what we were getting ourselves into or how much of an impact it would have. But we both showed up. We showed up and we were willing to be vulnerable. We were willing to go first and just kind of lay it out there around a bunch of people we had never really met. And the end result of that is a brothership, someone that I'm proud to call a brother and to lean on when I need help, and I know who I will be there for when he needs help as well. And that to me is what I'd like to talk about with everybody. I'd love to talk about what it's like to be the one who goes first, what it's like to stand up and admit, hey, I made mistakes, right? And listen, we're going to get to Al in a second because I literally cannot wait to share Al with you. But I just want you to know, failing is okay. And coming from someone who has succeeded, I've done a lot of cool stuff. I've done the whatever it is you want to do. You want the house, the cars, the toys, the money, cool. Doesn't get you very far. Okay, so without further ado, because I could ramble on this topic all day long, Al, man, it is an honor to have you here with me today, sir.
Jim, I received that. I appreciate that more than you know. I was just sitting here taking a few notes of how do I take my feelings, my thoughts, my belief systems about Jim Sabellico and not A, make it about me, and B, not make it 47 minutes of some sort of Wikipedia introduction, man. But the biggest thing, dude, I think you have it in your title, dude, is your heart. And that's the number one thing. I think when you shared, I remember going to that mastermind when I first met you, and that was the first, dude, for me. The first time I'd ever gotten any kind of personal and professional development, so I was really going out on a limb to better myself, but be vulnerable while doing it. And then hope that I was in a position that I aligned with people and men that would allow me to kind of be there. And by the grace of God, dude, the very first dude, I'll never forget it, leaning up, arms crossed against the outside of the building. I walk up, there's Jim Sabellico, man, big friendly smile. There we go. And then that's what started it, man. And then you've always led conversations real and raw with your heart. Jim and I talk a lot about not engaging in only surface level conversations, meaning, hey man, how you doing? Are you really asking how you're doing, or is it just a courtesy how you doing? Or how's the weather today? Or how are the kids? They're filler conversations, and I feel like the conversations I have with you are never filler. It's always real and it's raw, whether it's something that I'm doing great in my life or maybe not so great in my life, or vice versa. We're there to be able to have a support system in a tribe, and I respect that and I appreciate that about you, brother. And I love you for that, man. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm thrilled to share a little bit about who I am and my story and see if that can't serve just at least one person listening.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And I think, you touched on a good point there. Like, we don't have those filler conversations. And I think the reason is both of us have a deep understanding of the value of time, right? Because, I don't want to speak too much for you and your story, but, at least for me, like, the whole reason this podcast exists is because there was once upon a time where I prioritized being successful and doing the business thing over showing up as a father and a husband, showing up for myself. And I didn't have the time to do it, right? So in order to achieve all those things and do that and be that person that I really wanted to be, I had to get real clear about, where is my time best spent? Is it best spent on doing X, Y, and Z? No, it's filler. It's junk, right? I'd rather be intentional about where I invest my time than know what's going to come back.
Good.
If you would, take me a little bit through your backstory and kind of where you started when we first met.
For sure, man. I know that's a little bit of a softball, so I appreciate that because I know you know my backstory, and I'm very, very, very particular about time and how I choose to either spend or invest it. But before we kind of dive into that, man, I'll share with your audience a little bit about my story and who I am in that. So, Al Hammett, I turned 42 on Thursday by the grace of God. So I suspect, even though Jim is ninja level about turning things around, I suspect this may come out. So by the time you hear this, 42, 3 kids, 20, 13 and 10, boy, girl, boy. A wife that has blessed me with much more than I deserve. Believe that. She's been with me in multiple seasons of my life, and we'll kind of chat a little bit about what that means. But we just celebrated 12 years, again, by the grace of God. What do I do for a living? I wear multiple hats. I'm a second generation custom luxury home builder based out of the Midwest, specifically Northwest Indiana. I'm also a high performance consultant and coach, and I coach and consult a lot of folks in the construction industry relative to their systems and their times and things of that nature. But before we kind of dive into that, the catalyst as to how I met you. Dude, it was, I think, November or December of 2019.
November 13th.
Look at that. I expect nothing less from you.
It's an important day, man.
I love
A friend's anniversary.
brother. 100%, man. I would like to sit here, brother, and tell you, like, dude, there was just some justifiable catalyst as to why and how I was, but there really wasn't. I remember waking up almost feeling like some sort of depression or something was off. And I liken it to the feeling that I had when I once back in the day broke up with my high school girlfriend. You know, it's all you know, it's your first love, it's down and it's gray, and you understand what the area or the reason is as to why you feel that way, and you know that you feel that way. Well, I had those feelings, but there was no catalyst. There was nothing wrong. I mean, grace of God, everybody in my family was healthy at the time as well. Business is going well. So there wasn't a proverbial instigator for me to feel that way, or so I thought. So I ended up going to a physician to kind of look, just get stuff checked out and to figure out what exactly was going on. And I'm just not an advocate of treating the fruit. I mean, I don't want to just take a pill just to be able to, is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it a thing? I'm not dismissing the need for medication or supplementation. However, I wanted to garner some additional insight relative to the root. What was the problem? So I could have an idea of how did I get to this point, so I can make sure that I don't make that same mistake or have that happen again. And I'll kind of time collapse that because that's a long story, but I went to a holistic physician, and she basically shared with me and educated me on cortisol issues and phase 2 adrenal fatigue, which I had no idea what it was, but I understood at the time the symptoms were the fruit of that problem, which was 6 o'clock wake up calls became 5 o'clock in the morning wake up calls, 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and the next thing you know, you're shutting down your laptop at 10:30, 11:30 at night, and you're opening it back up at 1:30, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Under that proverbial grind to be able to get yourself and put yourself in a position to where you can lead yourself and your family where you need to be. And you think you're doing the right thing until a physician tells you, hey, you can't will yourself out of this. You kind of got to come up for air. And I'd like to sit here and tell you, dude, that, yeah, that's exactly what I did. But I didn't. I went back out and was like, okay, let me figure out what I have to do. And I was always that type of guy that is, I'll research it. If I need to get bigger, I'll eat more. I'll do more push-ups. If I need to get faster, I'll run more. I'll run more often. But this is a situation, man, where I actually had to do more of less. And that was a start of a very long journey. I'm still very much in that journey, man. And it led me to meeting you. It led me to meeting a mentor that I know that we both love and respect. It led me to meeting a host of individuals in multiple masterminds and tribes that really kind of unlocked me and opened up my belief system as to who I am and who I really wanted to do, be, and have. Dude, a lot of that came from, so my father's I'm second generation home builder, and my father is an immigrant from overseas, came here, learned English from my mother at the age of 19. And I saw my father, again, I'll time collapse this for the sake of time. I saw my father really grow our business, our family business, and bootstrap it from nothing to essentially a multi-million-dollar business by the grace of God and the sweat of his brow. And I learned hard work, dedication, commitment, the same things that many of us do and have been conditioned by the grace of God, by folks in our family or a mentor or somebody in leadership that really kind of shows us the ropes. And I took over, air quote, about 12 years ago. And I was the builder, the real estate broker, the designer. And hear me when I say I have zero business being the designer, but man, I had this notion in my head, right? You've always heard, sometimes from time to time, you'll hear people say, well, hey, Junior took over, and what does the son do? Does the son gonna grind the business into the ground, or did the son have a good attitude? They've got a growth mindset. They're ready to sharpen the saw and learn. Are they going to scale the business? And being second generation, I held my hat on the latter. So I did every single thing, man, that I possibly could to grow the business. And candidly speaking, if we're going to be really real, Jim, I didn't want to let my dad down. My dad came from a different country, didn't even speak English, and was able, by the grace of God and the sweat of his brow, to build a multi-million-dollar organization. And here I am, born in the United States. I've had access to the systems, to the personnel, to the players. I've watched him grow that business. And I've been college educated, again, by the grace of God, with 3 degrees, 2 of them at the graduate level. So imagine that mindset that I put in myself, that pressure of being able to say, well, listen, my dad didn't have any of that. He didn't have any of these tools, and he came and he was able to do this. And if that's what he did, then this is what I should be able to do to make my family proud, make him proud, make myself proud. And I very much attach my self-worth to those results and to that level of thinking. And that put me in a position, man, where you've got a story that I think one of the many reasons why we've resonated is your no half cake story. Have you shared? I'm sure you shared that on this before. All right. So very similarly, mine was also a birthday song, but I did something, dude, it wasn't good. I mean, meaning essentially I had a fear in my mind that I did not want a client or a potential client to think I was disinterested in them or being able to build them a house, especially because of the catalyst of what I just shared with my why is that I wanted to be successful both for myself and my family, and B, I didn't want to let my dad down. I wanted my dad to know, like, hey, I can do this. And I use the word successful strategically because we can kind of chat about that, dude. I didn't have my vision or definition of success clearly defined. It was just, how many zeros can I get in my bank account? And we'll just go as hard as we can to be able to get there. And then the reality of what happened is I got, and I say this in context, not to be arrogant or braggadocious, I earned the proverbial zeros I was looking for in my bank account. And then I got there and I had left a wake of personalities, a wake of relationships because of my personality in my wake. And basically had to go continuously on an apology tour, because if you didn't run at the same level or cadence or were working as early or as hard as I was, you weren't about that grind. You weren't about that life. And it doesn't mean I didn't like you or I didn't respect you. I'm just not going to roll with you. And if you got in my way, it's another conversation to have, man. And I had to go back, and I still am repairing a lot of the relationships because I put the result in front of the relationship. One of those times was a time a client had called me, and I recognized basically kind of what I did wrong. My client had called, dude, and we were in the middle of singing my son happy birthday to my son, so, and this is a story on where I think one of the reasons why Jim and I relate so well, because when I first heard your story about the half cakes, I was like, oh shit, excuse my language, like, man, A, I'm not alone, and B, there's somebody else right next to me that I can feel knows the same thing. How do we navigate life together? And in my mind, it was me stopping singing happy birthday to pick up a call from a client that was at the time a potential client, but I assumed was going to be a client, and I wanted that sale. And I had told my son, hang on a second, buddy, I got to take this call, and put myself in a position, not thinking of what I was sharing or what I was telling my son, but thinking, hey, I want my clients to know, hey, this is important. If I take a call after hour, they're going to assume, hey, Al is really about it. He's really about the service. He's going to be there for us. If he picks up the call at 7:30 at night, I know that, he's going to be there and we should go with it. And that was my mindset. And what I didn't know was that was conditioning both my clients to be able to do that going forward, which further attributed to my adrenal fatigue and cortisol issues. And at the same time, I was pushing my family away from me. All my son wanted to do was hang out with dad. And then that came, I started recognizing different things, man. So when I would come to the door at the end of the day, pull into the garage and come off, my son would come and meet me at the door, reading my face. Is dad on the phone call? Can I talk to dad? Can I approach dad? Is it pissed off dad and I probably shouldn't say anything? Or is it, hey dad, look what I did at school today? Or can you play sports with me? Can you play football or soccer or whatever it was in the backyard? And then he stopped doing that. And then it became a point where I came home and I was anticipating to see him. And over time, I had erroneously conditioned him of like, hey man, you're important, but you're not important as dad's work right now. I've got to be able to get this done. And then and only then when I get this done, I can come back and hang out with you. And my intention wasn't to say, hey, you're less important than my work. My work was for my ability to be able to provide and take care of my son and my daughter and my other son and my wife. But I lacked a vision and I let my day to day put myself, dude, in a position where my quote unquote success took over my true definition of success. And I can kind of land the plane right there because I know you've got a lot to unpack on that, man. But that was where things kind of all started for me, where I kind of needed to take a deeper look and have a very, very finite look as to where it is that I'm at and where I was going to go and how the heck was I going to get there and bridge that gap.
Oof. That's a powerful story, man. And thank you for sharing all that and being as vulnerable as you were with it. I think one of the most important things I want to touch on in that, because you're right, there's a lot to unpack in there and we can probably talk for another 7 hours on it or more, but trying to figure out the vision and how do you share that vision and how do you get everyone on the same page? Because, when you're talking about you're conditioning your son to understand to you, work is more important than he is, right? Because in that moment when you're saying happy birthday and you pick up the phone call, whether you're saying it or not, you're saying, hey, this call is more important than you. Right. So, over time they start to realize that. And I think the counter argument to that is going to be, hey, listen, do I want to live in a world where I can just be with my kids all the time or be with whatever or do whatever I want all the time, for anyone who doesn't have kids? Sure, that's great. But ultimately you still have responsibilities and you've got to get the work done. Right. So there's going to be people who say, well, listen, it's just not realistic. How do you do that? And I know you've got some ninja level tricks, which we'll get to in a minute. But to me, one of the things that I think is most important, when you said, trying to understand with your family, hey, listen, work is really important, but I'm doing it for you. I think when you get everyone on the same page with the why, right, when you cast a clear enough vision, everybody understands they're doing it for this reason. Right. So they're on the same page and they're helping you get that thing done because they understand, hey, the more I can help dad do this, or whether it's not dad, whether it's, your boss or whether it's someone else on the team. Right. Because I exchange the family role and the professional role pretty interchangeably. To me, I think being a leader in a business or a leader in a family, like kids and employees, kind of the same thing. But when you cast a clear enough vision and get everyone on that same page, they understand. Like, hey, listen, if something comes up that's important, tell me. Like, I'll do what I got to do. But also, you're there to support the mission because you know kind of what the end result is. If you can support me, I'm going to take that support, I'm going to go out and multiply it, I'm going to bring it back, and you're going to reap the benefits too. So I just want to add that note. But for you, what would you say has been like the most effective way you've been able to really create time and figure out how to be in all those places at once?
Dude, that's a really good question, Jim. I don't know that there's one specific thing, man. There's a litany of things that I've had to learn and had to do, but at the end of the day, genius leaves clues, right? So what I did, you're talking to a guy as we're recording on a podcast that never listened to a podcast prior to 2019. Not because I didn't know what they were or where they were available. Man, I just put myself, and I'm not, maybe at one point in time I was in my development or my journey, but let's be real and let's be raw and completely transparent and vulnerable, right? Because what's the point of being surface level out of fear of what somebody else is going to think about you? And I'm speaking to myself, so I say that to say, I may have been ashamed at one time to share the fact that I never once thought that I needed professional or personal development. I was always the type of guy that like, listen, man, if you need to figure it out, research, study, learn, but figure it out. If you got to stay up later or get up earlier to do that, you got to do that. And when I learned about, dude, it's okay not to have the answers for yourself. It's okay to hit your knees, pray, and ask for guidance from God, to ask for whatever. And I learned that God speaks to me through relationships and puts people in my life, case in point, you, to help me facilitate maybe something that I need or a direction that I need to go. And there was a gentleman that came into both of our lives through that and helped me really understand how to be more self and situationally aware. So when we start kind of down that process of like, dude, what are the one tips or tricks that, the listeners can do to try to say, hey, if they're struggling with time optimization or vision or learning to understand like, hey, my want and my heart is to be there for my family and my kids. But my job and my career right now is just really taking me to another level and it's preventing me from doing that. You may have to have that conversation with yourself on whether or not, is it truly a season? I mean, is it just this 6 months or just this year? Or do we get to that 6-month period or we get to that year period and then another 6 months and another year? And then the next thing you know, your 5-year-old is 10 and your 10-year-old is 20 and you're sitting there saying, well, wait a minute, I thought I had time. So you mentioned the word time, dude. Time is absolutely unequivocally undefeated. It's just our perception of it that needs to change. And I don't want to say just as in a marginalization because that's a very, very big deal. A lot of people actually have vision. And I know that we talk a lot about that. We can get into the weeds of exactly like, how do I come up with a vision? What is my vision? Like, what does that even mean? How do you live your day to day? All of that good stuff. Some folks just straight up, they don't have it. They've not been conditioned. They've not been taught. They don't understand the meaning or the value behind it. Or some folks, they just don't believe in it. Whereas others, they have it, they understand it, but maybe they have a perception issue as it relates to the amount of time that they have in any given year, month, set period of time to be able to bring it to fruition. And that, I think, is also a compounded problem. So, dude, as we talk about that, the biggest thing was self and situational aware. Like to understand, like, wait a minute, man. At the time I was 38, somewhere around there. And I felt like everything that I was doing, I was trying harder at it. I was putting myself in a position where I was diligently focusing more because I had to apply more effort. And I felt like the proverbial rope of my life, I was wrapping it around, trying to control every aspect of my life and where I wanted to be. And the rope was just slipping through my hands. And the harder and harder I tried, and the more and more I focused, the more it got like, dude, I genuinely don't know like what to do or how to do that. And I had to reset. And to reset, I had to learn how to do that, and that's where the awareness came. So then I started researching. And when I say researching, guys, it's not like, I went down the rabbit hole of case studies on Wikipedia. I've listened to podcasts. That was my very first thing. The Steve Weatherfords of the world, Ed Milet's, Hal Elrod's, Brendan Burchard's, basically anybody that had a positive message, anybody that had a systematic approach to their life, their day to day. I wanted to understand, how does this guy get from a board meeting at 7:15 in the morning in California to a soccer game for his son in Florida at 5:15 at night, and the litany of details that he has in the interim, and he's able to get up and do it day after day after day without burnout and without the regret or the fear of being able to miss out. Like, what do we do? And the very first thing I understood was, dude, it starts with your vision. Like, if you don't know where you're wanting to go, how do you know where you're going to be? And I know that sounds really cliche when we just talk about vision and we throw out arbitrary words like vision or relationships. But what are the meaning? What are the meaning that you and I attach to that? What's the meaning that I attach to that? Vision is, I want to be able to put forth my effort to do what I can do every single day. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that when I get there, it's actually a place I want to be, meaning it's my vision. I'm not just doing it because I've done it for 30 years of my life. How many friends and families do we know? And it's commendable. I mean, dude, I respect it like you believe. Somebody has a position in a career that maybe wasn't a career that they had vision for. A family member or a friend got them involved in it. The next thing you know, they turned out to be okay at it. And okay turned out to be pretty good. And then pretty good turned out to be, hey, I'm retiring here. Nothing wrong with that if that's actually what you want to do. But if you find yourself in my position where it was something that you were kind of chasing a dream that maybe really wasn't yours, again, I shared with you multiple times, I just wanted to make my dad proud. So my vision was to not let my dad down. Well, that negative didn't get me to where I wanted to be in the positive. I had to reframe that in my mind and think, what do I want out of this? And is this something that I even want a career choice? Man, I could go be a garbage man, a school teacher, an athlete, an insert here, but make it something that I have vision for. So when we talk about vision, dude, I write it down and I reverse engineer it into three things. And I'm big on like acronyms or stuff that are like the same letters. It just helps me to remember. So we talk about, even before vision, it's vitals, vision, and vehicles. So with our coaching clients, I will talk about, hey, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? And we talk about all of those things. And sometimes clients will talk about, hey, man, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to be the dad that's not available anymore. I don't want to be the guy that's living paycheck to paycheck. I don't want to be all of these things. Great. But your reticular activating system doesn't know anything different because you're focusing on what you don't want, and what we focus on grows. What is it that you want? You have a conversation like that, and I know you do this with some of your work as well. When you have a conversation with someone like that and they haven't ever thought forward thinking positively, dude, it's like a deer in headlights. Well, I can tell you exactly what I don't want, but you want me to dial in exactly what it is that I want? And I was that guy. It was hard for me to understand exactly where I wanted to be. So the first thing, before I had to get that detailed down, let me just figure out where I'm at. Let me do a vitals assessment. And dude, the light bulbs went off in my mind, because as a business owner, multi-business owner yourself, it's very easy for us to understand a quarterly review. Most of us can understand, hey, listen, if you want to earn $1 million a year, you should have some sort of a quantifiable metric set up that every 90 days or so, again, a quarter, you're inspecting what you're expecting, to be able to understand that by June of the year, if you're not pacing at plus or minus 500, you probably need to have some conversations to course correct. We do that in our businesses like clockwork, but nobody does it in their personal life, or not a lot of us do it in our personal life, certainly myself. So what I started recognizing was, listen, first of all, there's the time piece. How can I take my time? And at the beginning of the podcast, I shared the difference, or I spoke specifically to spending and investing your time. And that's where I talk about a little bit between the depth perception. For those of us that have a finite vision, man, I know exactly who I want to be, what I want to have, how I want to get to, all the things I want by the end of the year. But I have no idea how to get there. I got a very clear vision of how to do that, but I just don't know how to get there. That's the vehicles piece. So to piece this together, a vitals assessment is not an Al versus Jim. It's not Al versus Rachel. My wife's name's Rachel. It's a vitals assessment of not even a competition of myself. If I was to outline where my vision is, am I hitting that vision in all areas of my life? Yes or no? It's not a yes, comma. It's not a yes, ... It's well, maybe. It's yes or no. And the only person you're BSing is yourself. You just got to be real with yourself. So if you outline physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, 5 easy buckets. For some of us can be 3, some of us can be 33, whatever you want to do. If you're really real, we talk about being truthful and vulnerable and transparent. Are you a 10 out of 10 in those buckets? Yes or no? Okay, that's a vitals assessment. The difference between your vitals assessment, which is your starting line, and your vision, which is your finish line, that's the delta. That's the how. We know where we're at. We kind of know where we want to go. Let's take kind of to very matter of fact. So one of the things, you mentioned tips and tricks, brother. One of the things that we do as a tip and trick, in 2 weeks, my wife and I will take a day. We're going to French Lick, Indiana. We take a day. In-laws will watch the kids, distraction free. And all we're doing is vision planning for 2024. Big whiteboard, like an easel type thing, in a hotel with people that we don't know, so we can't be distracted. And we basically just hang out, order room service, do whatever we want to do for the entire day. And then we make a date of it and hang out afterwards when we're done. But we're talking about like dreaming. Like, babe, what would it look like if? What is if? And it doesn't even have to be a thing. A lot of folks will say, well, I want a new car, or I want to have a new house. I'd like to have a new career. Those are all things, and they can certainly be part of your vision, but they don't have to encompass your vision. Who are you? Like, how do you show up in life? Like, Part of my vision was making sure that I'd be able to get on a podcast with my brother Jim. I never have to say, hey, dude, I stopped singing happy birthday in the middle so I could take a client call to be able to earn it. For real. I mean, we can smile about it and laugh about it, but I've talked to you about it. I know that hurts your heart. I know for a fact. Same. That's why we talk about it. So other people could be like, dude, I don't want to hide this. This sucked. What I did was wrong and it wasn't smart. But dude, understand why I did it so you can understand not to do the same thing and stop subscribing to this fickle grind culture. Anyhow, I digress. That vision piece, very simply, if you and your spouse or your significant other, friend, partner, whatever it is, are raising a glass on December 31st, 2024, and you're saying by the grace of God and the sweat of our brows, this is what we were able to accomplish this year. What is this? Is it a new house, a new career, a lifestyle change? Are you eating healthier? Are you more present? Are you shutting your phone off or your workday off at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock every single day, regardless of situation or circumstance? What is that? What commitment are you holding to? Money aside, time aside, if you had all the time and all the money in the world, in a perfect world, like literally, how would you live your life every single day? Like dream like that. Not like, well, I would live in Bermuda, but I don't have the money to do that. Or I would live in Turks and Caicos, but I don't have the money to do that. Why? Let's talk about a vision that is beyond the realm of our capacity to understand. Now, maybe we fall short of that vision and we're light years away from where we are today. But if we don't have a finite understanding of where it is that we want to go, we're going to end up somewhere else. Same thing. We have a year between now and the time we talk about this in a year from now. If we're on a course and we have GPS coordinates and we want to go to Antarctica, dude, if I'm off by just an inch on that, I'm not going to end up in Antarctica. I'm going to end up in someplace far, far away, somebody else's vision, doing some stuff that I won't. And then I'm going to question my life. I don't want to do that again. I've already done that. Put myself in a vision so I have a very finite idea of where to go. Vitals, that's where I'm starting. Vision, this is where I'm going. Now, how do I connect the dots? That's the vehicles piece. I'll kind of come up for air right there. I know I just verbally vomited a lot. I know I could tell you're chomping at the bit to say some stuff as well, dude. So we'll kind of land the plane on that, and I'll get back to the final piece after this.
Okay. So thank you, because that was a value bomb, man. So there's a lot to unpack there. I think the first one I want to touch on is when looking at vitals. One of the most important parts that I can see for that is being able to set the ego and pride to the side and giving a honest evaluation, because it really is only hurting yourself if you're not. And one of the things I see a lot, and I have been guilty of it in the past, is keeping that ego and pride protected because you're afraid to admit, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I did fail. Maybe I'm not the smartest person at X, Y, or Z. And I see so many people, whether it's the ego and pride part, whether it's the masculinity part, because you feel like you have to be this big, strong, burly dude who never shows any emotion other than just bleeding confidence. Like, that's not real. So if you're going to get an honest evaluation, you have to be able to do that part. And to take your example here, if we're charting a course from here to Antarctica, but we've given a false representation of where here is, the directions ain't going to work. And then we're going to be pissed off at the directions when the whole time we started out by lying to ourselves. So I just wanted to give an exclamation point to that in order to really get the job done, it's got to start with putting the ego aside, putting the pride aside, putting together, really just understanding who you are and being honest. Like, if you're afraid of who you are, then say that. And if you don't have people in your life who will support you in that to me is step number 2, if not step number 1, is finding those people and having the relationships with people who are going to love and support you for who you are. Right? I know that there is not a day that goes by that if I am at my lowest and I screwed up and did whatever, I have zero doubt that I can call Al and say, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. Let me have it. Like, tell me your thoughts. Where am I at? And I can be vulnerable with Al. Same to me. And that part, I think, can't be emphasized enough. Ego and pride aside, and relationships. Because like you said before, there's this mentality of hustle and grind. There's a lot of people who get into that founder role. Like, this is your baby, right? Whether it's you want to make your dad proud or you want to make yourself proud, whatever it is, right? Again, pride. We look at it like, I will do whatever it takes, even if I have to do it all myself, right? I'll take on the world. I'll be the designer. I'll be the architect. I'll be the real estate guy because I have to do it because I need control over it because it's got to be done the way I want to do it, right? And we're afraid to let go of control because we think we're the only person capable of doing it, when really it's just not true. So talk to me a little bit about building relationships, what that looks like for you, and how do you evaluate a relationship, whether it's worth investing into or not?
Oh, dude, that in and of itself was good. You had two good points that I want to circle back on as well. So I'll directly answer your question, and then I want to go back because there's a direct correlation with something that you shared earlier that I think the audience we should definitely expand on. But relationships, man, exactly what you just said. So let's continue to be completely transparent and vulnerable. Relationships were, for me, were a byproduct of the result. Meaning, if you were on my team and we won, cool, I'll roll with you. We're on the same team. I'll look to be your teammate next year, and I'll be a good teammate. But if you are not on my team and we're competing together, it's you versus me. And I don't know if that was a learned. I don't know if that was a traumatic experience coming up. I haven't done enough of the work yet to understand the root of that. But I was very much result oriented, and that those result oriented orientations were tied to my self-worth, which a lot of us do. So, dude, even as a little kid growing up playing basketball to now, to the story I just shared about, hold on a second, son, I got to take this call. All of that is because I tied my self-worth to the results that I was yielding from my work, from a basketball game, a soccer game, building a house, a deal about building a house, all of that. When I made the goal, I made the basket, or I closed the deal, things were great. It was awesome. Hey, it was good. And then you get to the point, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And then there's those issues associated with that. Or the downside is if you quote unquote failed, or you lost, or you didn't make the shot, or you didn't get the deal, or whatever the case may be, you attached yourself to that result. So now you're only good unless you win, and you're only good unless you continuously win. And if you lose, it's deep, dark conversations that nobody wants to have with you. To your point, learning how to understand how to pedestal the relationship, regardless of the result, was and still is, dude. I'm not even going to say like I have it perfected and have it figured out. But learning how to do that was very much a challenge, and a challenge for me because I'm an empath. I'm also admittedly a crier. Dude, I'll cry from like watching Varsity Blues or Titanic. Like, it is what it is. I lead with my heart. And man, ever since I was a little kid, I've always been that way. And I found that when I started opening up and sharing my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions, I learned and I recognized that the reason why I chose not to do that is because as a society, as a man, an individual even, particularly men, we're conditioned that showing your emotions, in particular crying, is weak. And you should never be negotiating any deal or your life from a position of weakness. So I never wanted to be in a boardroom or a classroom or a job site or insert here showing any kind of weakness. And I owned that to the point where in a meeting, dude, I wouldn't even let you see emotion on my face. You could be telling me, hey, man, I solved world peace. Nothing. Because I don't want you to think that I'm negotiating for a position of weakness if I actually want your product or service. How many deals, how many relationships did I lose, or how much more money did I spend because of that? When now I've learned to understand that, man, relationships reap the rewards. Pedestal the relationships, and they will put you in rooms and give you seats at tables that, quite candidly, I don't deserve still to be at. But by the grace of God, God speaks to me through relationships. So understanding what to look for is something that I had to learn. So I started opening up and talking to everybody. That's my mentality, man. We're going to be real. We're going to get practice. We're going to get it reps. That's exactly what we're going to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to go out and do it. And that made me feel the way too, if I'm going to be completely transparent, continue to be completely transparent, because I recognize, well, wait a minute, dude, it's not natural for me to tell someone or ask someone for help, especially when I'm pretty sure I think I can do it myself. But if I can't, I have, to your point, Jim, I have an unrealistic expectation as it relates to that. And because of that, control was something that I always thought that was mine, an illusion of control that I could have. Like if I want to get bigger, I go work out. If I want to run faster, again, all the analogies that we've already shared. But what happens when something is out of the realm of your control? Now you need those relationships. And that's when you kind of see people come across as salesy. Like, hey, this guy never talks to me, but all of a sudden he needs something, and now all of a sudden he's talking to me. I didn't want to be that guy. Like it wasn't a deal. So I put actual time in my schedule to be able to sow into relationships. You and I do it quite a bit. Randomly, it's 15 minutes a day. And all I do is I put 15 minutes a day in my calendar, and I just get alone. I listen to music. I don't do anything. And I just do. Sometimes I hear nothing and I'm like, okay, great, move on. But I give God a chance to talk to me, to nudge me, or to be able to feel something. And all I'm looking for is just a person to think about. If somebody comes to my mind or my heart, dude, that's all I'm doing is sending them a text message, video, voice message, or just saying, hey, man, thinking about you. You're on my mind. You're on my heart. With genuinely no expectation of them to even tap back thumbs up, let alone send me something back or give me something out of that. And I want them to know that. Like, I'm going to reach out to you continuously when God puts it on my heart, and I'm not going to ask you for anything. So it's a genuine relationship. I actually give a shit. I'm not asking for something or planting a seed. And you do that for a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year. I've been doing that by the grace of God since 2019. And now I have acquaintances that have become friends, friends that have become brothers, brothers that have become Jim. So the stuff that I'm sharing isn't smoke and mirrors. It isn't, hey, man, it sounds really good. No, dude, it's good. And some of the messages aren't always sprinkles and rainbows. It doesn't always have to be fake or fickle, or it shouldn't ever be fake or fickle. But it can be real. Hey, man, I just let you know I'm in a spot right now, dude, and I'm thinking about you. And most of the time, that person is going to want to do what you're doing for them. You're just reaching out. You're helping, man. Hey, man, great, dude. What kind of spot? What's going on? Is there something that I can help with, or what can we do? And eventually, dude, you put yourself in a position where you've got a circle, not a cage. And that was one of the things that I did before. And what I mean by that was, man, I sure threw my pearls to swine. Meaning anytime anybody had an issue or something came up and I felt like, man, I've had that problem before, or dude, that's happened to me before. Man, I could send them a note, shoot them a DM or a text message, or give them a call and just let them know, hey, this happened to me. I heard this on a call, or overheard this, or I saw that you're struggling with this, and genuinely offer them like help, and not do it out of expectation for a fee or some sort of reciprocating compensation. Like genuinely, like, hey, man, I know I don't know you sometimes, but like, this is what helped me. Hopefully this will help and serve you. And sometimes that worked. But what I found, Jim, was, dude, that sometimes not only wasn't reciprocated, which is fine. It wasn't my expectation, but it was almost looked upon as like, what's the catch? Like the person was like thinking like, wait a minute, this isn't normal. I don't have anybody in my life that did that. And then that would frustrate me, and it would make me feel like, again, very early on, like, this is weird. This is like me dribbling a basketball left-handed or writing left-handed. And I genuinely called the year 2020 my left-handed year of learning how to write, learning how to live my life playing left-handed, quote unquote, on something that was outside of the realm of my norm, man. But it gave me permission to keep going. It gave me the hope to understand that I'd post something on social media from my heart, or something that I challenged myself to do because I wouldn't do it before, because I was afraid of what somebody else might think or say. And then I would get a DM or a message on something that I wasn't even thinking about, and somebody would edify or validate my feelings and say, man, I'm glad you said that. I was thinking the same thing. I would just never say it. Dude, and then immediately, now we bond. Now you have something in rapport for that person. And relationships reap the rewards. And I know that sounds really cliche, and it's like a tagline, and it is. I think about it that way genuinely, because I know if I navigate reward first, I'm going to leave those relationships in my wake in route to that reward, exactly like I said when I shared at the beginning of this call.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And it's interesting that you said leave it in your wake, because, it made me think about what we've talked about before, and the ripples, right? The ripples in the water from the impact that you leave. And you don't necessarily control those, right? Your job is to make the impact. You throw the rock in the water, and then the ripples spread. You can't control where the ripples go. They're just going to go, right? They're going to hit who they hit. But you control the impact that you give, right? You control yourself and what you give to the world, right? You go out there and you lead with that vulnerability. You send the message, you create the impact. If the ripple hits, the ripple hits. That's not up to you. But I think the more that we're willing to go out there and be the example of what's possible, to be the first one to stand up and be like, yeah, I'll lead with my heart. I will be the one to go out there and say, I love you. I'll be the one to go out there and do this thing that, I don't care if you judge me, that's fine. Because, I think there's so many people who are afraid of being judged, who don't realize they're being judged no matter what they do. And I've got so many examples, and I've shared it with you in the past, of I've gone out there and done things that are just beneficial for either myself or for other people and hurting nobody. Like, every day I go for a walk in my neighborhood and I pick up garbage, and people look at me weird. Okay.
It's
because
of the bumper you're carrying around. That's what
I'm waiting for that second bumper, man. It's coming. Every day I go and I started walking with my son, and we went on a walk and I saw garbage on the street, and he said, Dad, look how gross that is. People just leave their garbage on the street. And then we kept walking. And for the whole rest of that walk, I felt really guilty about the fact that I saw it, and he saw it, and I just walked past it. I didn't do anything about it. So then the next day, we got our garbage bag, our garbage picker, we packed, he cleaned up all of that garbage. Every day since then, we've gone out and done it. Now, it's been 38 days. I've picked up, I think, 22 bags of garbage so far, somewhere around there. My point is, there are some times where I will just be picking up garbage while I'm going for a walk. And the number of people who make weird comments about, why am I picking up garbage? Like, I'm literally just helping clean up your neighborhood too.
Yep.
And you're judging me for the fact that I'm picking up garbage while I'm going for a walk. My point being, even if you're out there doing something that benefits them, people will still judge you.
Right.
So if you get okay with the fact that no matter what you're doing, even when you're helping other people, you're going to be judged, it's going to be what it is. Just don't let it sink in. You know what you're doing is the right thing. Keep going forward.
So much goodness to unpack in that, man. You mentioned them, and you mentioned before failure. So one of the things that I've known about you, dude, is your ability to remove them as it pertains to that perception of that vernacular from your day to day. Meaning, and this correlates with the failure piece as well, I will often share with my wife and my kids that I'm a professional failer, not failure, failer. Meaning, I'm not afraid to go out and suck at something. Like, absolutely be just, dude, wow. Like, yeah, you should just go home, bro. You got a lot of work. To understand what it takes to put myself in a position, to learn something new because I value growth. Your heart is the exact same way. Dude, I've seen you value growth in other people even, which is another level and another conversation for another day. But understanding, as adults, we will share with our kids or our family or our kin or those that are less fortunate than us or younger than us, have less experience than us, and we'll say, dude, case in point, not we'll, let me say I will say to my children, every single time I leave them in the morning, they go to school, I drop them off at school, do the best that you can do. Be a good listener and be a great, and I stop. They could say garbage man, they could say policeman, they could say actor, they could say whatever it is that they want to do. But through conditioning and conversation, their word choice every time, sometimes reluctantly, Dad, okay, Dad. Admittedly, that's how it is, but it's leader. They speak that into existence. They tell me how they want to show up, how they want to be, and that's regardless of situation or circumstance every single time. My point in sharing that with you is I can't look my kids in the eye and from my soul genuinely give them direction and guidance and say, do the best that you can do. Be a good listener, because a lot of people hear, but not a lot of people listen. And if I don't genuinely remove the fickle expectation or fear of them At no point in time did I say, hey, do the best that you can do unless they are watching you. Who's they? Who is them? How many ideas has any listener, myself included, wanted to post on social media, Instagram, Facebook, or you wanted to say something, you wanted to raise your hand in second grade in a classroom, or even now, but you won't do it because in the back of your mind, you're like, they may say something. Who is they? Who is them? And why are you giving somebody you don't even know, a platform to make decisions in your life? And if you can't wrap your head around that, let me give it to you even better. Who is they? And why are you giving them a platform to make decisions in your children's lives? I didn't say go out and do the best you can do unless they are going to judge you. Then I need you to sit back. No, you have to understand. And that understand comes with your mindset, dude. With what I see from you walking out all the time, it's not you've removed the fear of failure. You've switched the rhetoric on the word or the meaning you've attached to failure. Case in point, I use this example all the time. You or I are 1 year old. We're 2 years old. I don't even know how old I was when I learned to walk. Full transparency. Let's just say a year and a half. It's not like I'm, if kids don't learn to walk until they're 3, it's not like I'm some like great walker. Let's just say that. Like I wasn't advanced. I'm just throwing a date out there. Let's say at the age of 2 years old, we're learning to walk and I fall and you fall. We don't think to ourselves subconsciously, well, I fell. I guess I'm not supposed to be a walker. I failed at. I'm just going to be a crawler my entire life. And you crawl your butt around for the rest of your life. No, you don't even think about what somebody else, you're not even looking to see if somebody else is watching you fall. Did they see me? Did mom and dad see me? Did my aunt see me? Did my friends over there on the teeter-totter, did you see me fall? I don't want them to see that. No. Somewhere you get up, you find it in yourself, and you keep going to figure it out until you figure out how to walk. Some of us walk better, slower, whatever, but you're still a walker. You're doing it your own way. What if we took that same logic and that same mentality and you did it in every single facet of your life across the board? I'm literally walking in that right now. Yeah, get it.
Because I think that touches on another interesting point, which I want to look at as well. When you're in that spot and you're learning how to walk, you're spending the most time often around your parents who are walking around. Your parents, hopefully, are not crawling around on the floor. So you see the behavior that they are modeling. And I think, before when you say, hey, kids, go out and be a great, and they say leader, do you think your kids would say be a great leader if you weren't? Would they really believe it? Do you think your kids would model the words you say or the behavior that you exhibit? Right? And look, I know you know the answer, but the point I'm trying to make here is a lot of times, and again, I'm going to go back to that ego and pride because we're afraid to admit that we are the ones who need improving in some way. Like, we look at everyone else, you need to improve, you need to do better at this, you need to do better at this. But a lot of times we fail to realize it starts with us. Like, if we are willing to do the work ourselves to be a better version of ourselves, right? Today, I'm better than I was yesterday, but not as good as I'll be tomorrow. I don't care if it's 0.0001%, it's going to be better. And you have to admit the fact that if things aren't going well, and that's your responsibility. As a leader, if people on your team, whether that's your employees or your family, are not living their best possible life, you got to take responsibility for how to properly support them, to give them an example to follow, and cast a vision for them to also follow. Like, and if that's not happening, it's easy to say, man, you're just not cutting it, you're fired. I'm just go find someone else. What's going to happen is you're going to cycle through people, and it's going to be faster and faster and faster until ultimately you either give up or get so frustrated or just go back to that grind mode. Let me do it myself.
Yeah.
But what's really happening is you're not taking the time to understand that person, their communication, build relationship. You're looking at them as a tool to get you, a certain result, right?
Very good.
There's so many parallels here, but sorry to interrupt. Just had to add that.
No, dude, it's not an interrupt at all. It's a value add. And for the listeners, and again, I'm going to say this genuinely in context, certainly not trying to be arrogant or braggadocious by any means, but dude, this conversation is getting into be like a masterclass of mindset and belief systems relative to relationships. And I know that prior to coming into this, you and I didn't really have a vision or some random things that we wanted to speak with. We wanted it to be organic, and I love how this is going, man. So one of the things that I wrote down that you said, which is a very, very good point, Jim, is modeling, right? So as much as I would like to think and believe that I'm modeling a behavior that my kids, that I would want my kids to follow suit, I really don't know, right? My kids are well, I take that step back. My oldest is 20. You're a grown adult, right? So I can't fake the funk. My middle child is 13 and she, okay? So there's she, right? So you can't fake the funk either a lot of times with a teenager, especially a female teenager at that, because they're very quick to tell you their opinions. With that, man, my kids will tell me my opinions. Like if there's a deal where dad is showing up and I'm off kilter, my son will remind me. I talk about living in the, and you know this all the time, living in the and. So if I make a decision, just last week in the backseat, he was like, Dad, you sure? I thought we live in the and. That's exactly why. That's of course correct. That's okay. You know what, buddy? You're right. And that was a poor choice decision that dad made. And even at that, I want my kids to see me mess up. I want my kids to see me quote unquote fail. One of the things that I never really had access to directly, I believe. And I'm sure if I went through the halls of my brain and my memory, I could probably find a handful of memories for sure. But indirectly, I'm sure that my parents failed across the board. But one of the things I don't know or I can really recall is seeing my parents fail at like an event, a sport, a career, a business decision, things of that nature. Inevitably, I'm sure they did. We all fail. It's just whether or not they showcase that or not. Good and bad, right? So I didn't have necessarily access to that. The bad piece is when I got into the quote unquote real world as an adult, even a teenager or an adolescent, and then got into some low level business activities, I didn't know how to fail. I didn't know how to navigate after that. And again, I shared with you guys that I attached my self-worth to the results that I was getting. And it's because I didn't know how to fail that once I actually failed at something that was traumatic, quote unquote, enough for me to say, wait a minute, dude, what is going on in my life? And it totally checked my self-confidence, my sense of self-worth, things of that nature. It was like, well, there's deeper rooted stuff here. So understanding that my parents were amateur parents, and I say that with the utmost respect. I love my parents still to this day, but their parents were amateur parents. Every single one of us had a set of amateur parents because nobody has still to this day. And if there is, please let me know. There's not a peer-reviewed PhD case study of what it is we need to do to be a perfect parent. You go through the muck of understanding what perfect parents didn't do. And then you have what I shared about you earlier, dude, the self and situational awareness. It's one thing to be, we all could have grown up in a similar situation. And how do we navigate that situation based on our perspective, based on our means, based on our opportunities, based on our personalities, all of those, a litany of variables. But what if we just said, you know what, my parents didn't do this for me. My parents never taught me how to do that. I'm self and situationally aware about it. I just need to do shit about it.
Let me add something else on that point, because this one is a mindset that I think is one of my favorites, and I don't hear it spoken enough. A lot of us, either as, again, we'll exchange the two, as a leader in your house or your business, we do things that we didn't like when we were on the receiving end of. So as a parent, as a dad, right, I will intentionally do some things that maybe I didn't get when I was a kid. And through no fault of my father, he didn't have X, Y, or Z. He had A, B, C, maybe not X, Y, and Z. And I valued X, right? So for me now, to my son, I want to give him X because it was a thing that I said, man, I don't want to do that. Let me course correct, right? So a lot of times we'll stand up as a leader and do the thing that maybe we didn't receive. I want to offer a different perspective and say, let's look at it as, what am I doing now that I'm going to give to my son or my daughter, either one, that when they are parents, they're going to say, I want to do that, right? Yeah. So to remove yourself from it, because so many times, like, this is the first time we're in this position, and no one has ever been in the position we're in now, okay? Because we're living in the present. It doesn't matter even if there's a course on it. I've never had a kid who is, this days old. I've never been in this situation before, because every day is going to be different, right? So when I'm sitting here, I'm looking at, I've received these lessons of how to be a parent from my parents. I want to do this sort of thing because now this is my moment to be a parent.
Yeah.
This is my moment to raise a son, to raise a daughter, to teach them how to raise their own family. So you got to sort of remove yourself from the situation and understand how the things that you're doing are impacting the people, around you. I don't want to give my kids a childhood or the people that work with me an experience that's going to say, I would run a company differently because I don't like the way he does X, Y, and Z. I don't want my kids to say, I want to be a different parent because my father didn't give me X, Y, and Z. Do you mean you got to be able to look at the downstream effect of the decisions you make and the impact that those have? And I don't think that perspective is shared enough.
Dude, that's a gold nugget for sure. I mean, and you can't turn on the news or any social media or get on any social media outlet without somebody somewhere upset or taking opinion or attaching meaning to what their kids are being taught or subjected to or what environment they're becoming a product of. I'm also one of those somebodies, right? So I'm very particular about who my kids align with, both at school, obviously what information they're receiving via technology and things of that nature. However, at the end of the day, our kids are human beings. They are free thinkers or should be taught to be free thinkers as well. And that hopefully that's my opinion, based on where we hope society can go. But at the end of the day, the biggest environment your children can become a product of is your home. Yes, they can have, and maybe it's different levels and it's different opportunities for those people that are in different situations. And maybe they don't necessarily have a home, or maybe the home is remote, or maybe there's a foster component or a litany of other things. However, the environment as a parent, as a provider, as a protector, in my opinion, that's my way, my opportunity. That's my biggest objective, my biggest goal. So when we talk about back to the vision conversation, reversing it down, vision isn't always about business. The business is the catalyst that drives the vision. The vision is to be able to have options, to be able to do what I want with whom I want and where I want by the grace of God and the sweat of my brow. And if that involves being able to be more present with my children because I want to teach my children how to think. Now, when I say think, and I know we're going down rabbit holes, so this is another conversation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be aligned with the way that I think. I don't want to raise my children to be yes men and yes women. I want them to challenge the status quo, but at the same point in time, I want them to understand and be free thinking in terms of how they research. When I say free thinking, if 9 out of 10 of you are jumping off a cliff because it's the quote unquote cool thing to do, you need to be the 10th one that isn't. You need to be confident in your ability to free think, to say, hey, I don't necessarily want to go along with this. Maybe my dad never taught me that. Maybe my mom wasn't present to teach me that, but somebody somewhere in my life taught me, hey, listen, I feel a little something. There's a little red flag. I got a gut feeling that says, this one's a little bit off. Listen to that and have the confidence to listen to that. And it goes back to what we shared about earlier. If you don't concern yourself by pedestaling the opinion of others, especially over yours, making that decision at an early developmental age is going to be a lot easier for you, especially as an adult, when you've been conditioned for 30, 40, 50 years of this is just what we do. Solid point.
And I think, look, it goes back to the conversation that your son brought up in the car. Hey, Dad, are you sure? Like, if you as a leader can't be questioned, you're a questionable leader. I'm sorry, it's just the truth.
Very good.
The people on your team need to understand you are not beyond reproach. Okay?
Yeah.
They need to have that comfort to say, you know what? That might not have been the best decision. And again, ego and pride aside, you put that down and you'd be like, you know what? You're right. Like, I think that's a truly important thing.
Dude, a lot of value in what you just shared with that too as well, man, because again, like as a leader, if you lack the confidence in your ability or you lack growth as your compass, then I would question how I could align with you or be led. And what I mean by that is if you don't want to be challenged or you don't want to be challenged in front of people out of fear of appearing not perfect or having it all figured out, then I would question where the organization is going to go. Meaning, eventually at some point in time, there's always going to be something or someone that offers your product or service better than you. Can you learn from that And if you don't, because you're afraid to be challenged, what happens when you go up against that person? Now I'm in an organization with a leader that has already told me we're going to be second at best, because our culture, our expectations, our mindsets, our belief systems don't allow me to be challenged. And if I'm not challenged, the organization can only grow to the extent that I can grow. And I'm not going to grow if I'm not challenged. Very good, dude. Very, very, very good. Masterclass, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
All right. So you're right. This has been a very long masterclass in relationships and growth. And I am truly thankful for all of the nuggets that you've shared and your perspective. Now, I got 2 more questions to ask you. I'm not sure which one's more important, but number 1, if you can give any one piece of advice, parting words, what would they be?
I sigh because, dude, like, where do you start with that? I think, man, the very first thing I'm going to do what my son taught me. So whenever we go, or we'll be picking out a pack of basketball cards or a loaf of bread, or insert something here, dude, just something random. I'll be looking at it and he'll be looking at it, and he's like, Dad, I'll always take the first one that I see. I always pick the first one that comes, because that's the one I was supposed to get. Okay. Whereas my mind, I'm like, the first one I see, maybe somebody moved it. And anyhow, I digress. So I go back to that. The first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question is be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. And if we could learn to be confident in who we are and save space to allow others to be confident in who they are. And I'm not saying, man, I'm competitive. I'm not saying remove any competition piece. But if we can learn to go through life to complete instead of compete, dude, things get entirely different. Doorways open up, perceptions change, and then the relationship thing that we just invested an hour and a half on, or whatever it is, all of that starts to become a reality. That's exactly what I would say. And 15 other things that I'm trying really hard not to say, so we're not on this for another hour and a half.
Yeah, it's man, I regret that I said only 2 more questions, because I have a lot of follow-ups to that, but I'll stick with it. I will just add in, though, that the confidence part and the authenticity and the lack of having to compete, and again, not from you shouldn't be competitive with the thing you want, right? Because I'm all for good competition.
Yeah.
But I think the important part to note is that the prize is not limited to just one person, right? Your success does not mean other people can't have it, or someone else's success doesn't mean that you can't also be successful. I think we got to get that mentality out, and the fact that if you win means I lose. Nah, man, we all can win. And the more that we win, the more we win. So, I really just wanted to exclamation point that one too.
That's ripples, man. Ripples.
Yeah, that's ripples.
Yes, sir.
All right, so last question. What's your favorite type of cake?
I should have known. That's very, very good, dude. I'm a big fan of red raspberry, although I just recently found out, not red raspberry, excuse me, red velvet. I recently just found out that red velvet is chocolate cake with red icing or red food coloring. And I know people are listening to this like, dude, welcome to 1978, but I'm just now figuring that out. So I feel a little bit slighted. I'm going to go with that for now, but I may come back on that and check to something better.
All right. Well, I'm fairly confident that there will be a second appearance of Al on this podcast, because we've probably got 80 hours of conversation at a minimum to go through. So man, I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you, and I honor you for the time and the commitment and the knowledge and the vulnerability you've shared here. If people want to follow you, get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that from here?
Just tell them to call you. You can so my name is Al Hamid. It's Ham, Ham, Ed. So LinkedIn, Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram as well. And you can also certainly find me with Jim. Jim, I received that. I very much appreciate that. Jim is you are very much one of my closest friends, man. And I respect you as a person. I respect you as a man. And I very much appreciate the safe space that you allow for myself and others to get on here and really genuinely share their heart and then actually give a shit about it, dude. I appreciate and respect that about you more than you know, and I love you, brother. And I'm looking forward to seeing this thing go crazy.
Me too, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Agreement.